This program is a paid commercial announcement and in no way represents the views of WPHT or its management.
Now on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT, WPHT, HD, WOGL, HD3, Philadelphia. Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor.
If we don't move in our own direction, we're going to become extinct. In fact, in some cases, we're close to being extinct right now.
Presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness, serious doctors for serious injuries, and powered by the law offices of Pond, Lehocky, Stern, Giordano. Talk, listen, and speak to the region's most influential leaders. It's Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor.
We have to decide whether the city of Philadelphia, who has had success with big ticket items like the Pope, like the DNC, and like the NFL draft, and like the Eagles parade, whether we want to continue to do those big events.
Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. A good Saturday evening, everyone, and welcome into what is our President's Hour with the president of the AFL-CIO, Pat Eiding, joining us here for the big show on a Saturday night. We take you back to 1 week ago with that audio soundbite from Mike Barnes in reference to the Made in America concert on the Parkway. At this time a week ago, we were having a conversation about whether or not the concert was going to stay at the Parkway. We bring Mike Barnes in since the update came out earlier in the week. We bring Michael Barnes into the program. Michael, a good Saturday to you, sir.
Good to talk to you guys, Joe.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Matt, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, pal.
So, Mike, your prophetic last words on the broadcast last week were you'd be willing to bet that the next time you talk to us, there'd be a good outcome for the situation on the Parkway. You want to give us an update, as many of us have already read in the newspaper. I'd love to hear from you.
Sure. As it's been reported, a deal was reached on Monday between Mayor Kenny and Rock Nation to bring back Made in America back to the Parkway for years to come. Didn't exactly say how many years, but it was clear that this was going to be a multi-year deal. That was the initial objective that we were focused on, and we achieved that objective. As we go forward, we'll work with the mayor to make that event a better event for Rock Nation and also for the community out there, soften the blow on the community.
Now, Mike, you talked about the man hours and putting them together. Tell us what you did there.
So the initial report, which I'm assuming the mayor made his determination on, identified a lot of information that was derived from the people around the Parkway. Once labor weighed in on the issue, we were able to provide a different perspective from a logistical standpoint, and we were able to take the problems apart that were identified in the report and give solutions to those problems. And I'm hopeful they were helpful to the mayor at his meeting on Monday, and will be used going forward as part of the solution for Made in America.
And Mike, some of the other folks who weighed in on this, obviously, are the people who live there nearby, and to their words, not mine, the extremes they go through, mainly because I guess the misconception. And this is something I heard the other day, that when they came to this thing, resolved that they're going to meet with the residents in that area to do some resolve. But the fact that it's not like the 3-day event that people think. It's for those folks. It's probably at least a week-long event, and I think that's some of the things that you offer to fix that may help to. Maybe not satisfy, but at least calm the waters a little bit. I think that the mayor did a good job. As he will do. You know, one thing great about this mayor, he doesn't get locked into his own mind. He's always open for discussion, and I know you had a great part of that back then. But I think the other part of that, and I don't know that I've heard yet what they all come up with, but all the parties who felt they were being put upon about it are coming together to try to make this thing happen, because it's a great thing for the city.
Well, one of the options that we had presented was that we could reduce the amount of time that the Parkway was being used by running double shifts for the stagehands. It was just by scheduling that they set single shifts, and it was only because they had the availability of the Parkway to schedule single shifts. when the time frames are reduced, which they are many times in my industry, the employers or the producers will just schedule double shifts, and that shortens the amount of time that we would use the Parkway significantly.
It's listen. I certainly can have empathy for the folks that live there, but it's such a great, especially for folks seeing events on there from other cities. It's such a great picture when the events happen there, whether it's the Pope or whether it's this or whatever, because the Parkway is such a beautiful area for the city of Philadelphia. But then again, those folks who live there think it's pretty nice on the day there is no event too. So, it's good that all parties at least are being considered, and I think that's really what I believe is great about this administration, that they're open to discuss these things.
Well, Pat, you look at the Parkway and you look at the issues that the residents are having. You could take that argument and you could put it down to South Philly and say maybe we should not have Phillies games or Eagles games there because the crowd, the noise, and the inconvenience for the South Philly people are problematic. You can then take that argument and say, well, maybe we should shut down 95 because the inconvenience that the people that surround 95 have to put up with in regards to 95. I mean, we could shut down Southwest Philly because of the Sunoco refinery. You could use that argument they used at the Parkway to shut down the entire city and do away with every job that we have. That's not what we need to be focused on. We need to be focused on a plan that brings big-ticket items in, that maximizes the city's potential to use their cultural strength to create jobs and economy in Philadelphia. And we offered the mayor a 4-point plan, which included reduced scheduling through doubling up shifts, parking solutions that will allow them to shuttle the people that are attending and the workers from outside the area inside on shuttles. We talked about a communication network that we use very successfully at the Convention Center through an organization called PALM, Philadelphia Area Labor Management, in which we do pre-show meetings and post-show meetings, take minutes and make sure we have a communication line to make sure everyone has their input and everybody gets the information. And we're talking right now with certain members of City Council to try to move forward some type of structured board that would be made up of people from the labor community, from the entertainment community, and from the community groups themselves to get together regularly to promote, to bring items in. Because while we were successful in doing Made in America, no one has talked about bringing back the NFL draft. And after that dismal show in Dallas, and I don't think it's going to be much better in Vegas, we are going to blow it away in Philly if we can get it back in here. And I think the sponsors are going to want it. We should be going after the NFL draft. We should be going after the Olympics. We should be going after the World Cup soccer. And when we do, we should go after there collectively so that everybody's interests are heard from, including the communities.
And that's, Mike, I think that's what I heard you just say, and I think that's the great part of this going forward, bringing people in. Because people who know me, I think the best way to resolve any problem, either before or after it happens, is to talk to each other. And I think the breakdown that you just laid out, that they're going forward, they're going to use for these kinds of discussions, I think that's important. I think it stops. Listen, everything we can do that's better for the city is better for the residents that live there. There's no question about it. And you mentioned a lot of venues. Listen, there was a lot of hollering and screaming about the stadium back when they were going to put it down by Chinatown, and subsequently it went to South Philly. So the people in South Philly had to say, well, why us all the time? But they've adjusted well, because I think when there's issues, they get addressed, and that community down there, like other communities, have a word. And I think that's what's good about the progress that I know how far you were involved in this, and the mayor. And what's good about this is that folks will listen to this tonight, will know back when you were doing this, labor wasn't just for the interest of labor. It was to get an event here that was good for the city and everybody lives in it.
Pat, we used the same approach to fixing the Pennsylvania Convention Center. I mean, if you go down toward the Convention Center during the flower show for that 14-day period, there's no more inconvenience than trying to get through that neighborhood during that show because of the success. But because it's located downtown, that's why the success is there. These communication tools have been put together. My friend John Doherty, president of Building Trades, instrumental through this whole process with MIA instrumental in putting together this communication where labor's voice, and you too, Pat, labor's voice is heard. So the good thing is, the mayor gave us the opportunity to participate. We think we helped out with the solution, and we think we can help in the future if he continues to include us in the conversation.
And, Mike, we had to give a shout-out to Palm, which Tony Wigglesworth, because almost everything that's involved with the city and labor that's going forward in a proper way and in a way that gets vetted out real properly is done by Tony and his group at Palm. It's been a great labor management program in the city that I don't think it's enough recognition. Of course, Tony don't want his name in lights. He just wants to be able to get things fixed. But as you mentioned, he's done great work at the convention center, great work at the NFL. I mean, it's just it's a silent tool that's good for everybody in this city. People don't realize.
I agree, Pat. And when I saw this problem for MIA and for the future of big shows in Philadelphia, Palm was on the top of my list as part of the suggestions for the solution.
Mike Barnes, business manager of IATSE, joining us here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor. Michael, keep up the great work, my friend.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Mike.
it. Thanks for coming on.
Mike.
Guys, thanks for all your support and thanks for the time. And as I said last week, thank you to the mayor. I knew I was going to be thanking him this week.
Awesome. Good stuff from Mike Barnes here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor. We'll get to our first commercial break. We'll continue with the President's Hour. Back in a moment.
I won't participate on behalf of ourselves here at Local 98 or the Philadelphia Building Trades in conversations that are purely dominated on social issues that don't affect our jobs.
Special thanks to Mike Barnes for joining us here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor. One last comment on our opening segment, a quote from Mayor Kenny: "The Made in America Festival belongs in Philadelphia, the birthplace of our country, and I'm optimistic that we can turn an unfortunate misunderstanding into a positive outcome and an even stronger event." Quote from Mayor Kenny following the resolution with Rock Nation.
Well, Joe, the last time I was on I hate to use the term, but it's better when you say it, but the President's Night, the big subject that we were talking about was the Mark Janus decision by the Supreme Court. And, as we mentioned there, we brought some people together and let the world know that we're not folding our tents and going away. We're, if anything, they've emboldened us to a position where we're working harder for our members and with our members and talking to our members. But it's interesting, the things that developed that the other world didn't know. They heard this as a Supreme Court decision and, what's right and wrong. What they didn't know, the underlying factor of the people who were putting billions of dollars into trying to destroy unions. And they've been trying that for years, whether it's ALEC, that group of people who were trying to tear it down. But interesting enough, I mentioned back then that right after the decision, all through the Internet, there were all kinds of forms being sent out to union members telling them how they could opt out of the union. And I will tell you, minimal at least, the reaction to that form. In fact, it may have insulted some of the union members that say, who are they to come in here? But what's really interesting, and I wish people, especially our members who really don't grasp yet how serious this is for collective bargaining and all organized labor. It's not just public employees. But this guy, Mark Janus, as soon as this decision was made, he right away went to work for one of the groups that's trying to tear down unions. So he retired from his job. And I think a little levity in this is that the union members had a guy was retiring from their ranks, so they had a retirement party. Unfortunately, Mark couldn't be invited because he's not a union member. So since he didn't want to be a union member, he's not a union member, and wants to take all the benefits and put his money in his pocket, the cake said, congratulations to Mark Janus for retiring from not being a union member. So, I don't know all the details, but, that's the atmosphere I see. I will tell you, last week we were in D.C., an advisory committee that I'm part of with the national organization. People are building up. I mentioned here back a ways that the right to work is being taken as a shield of honor for working people, and how many working people now are finding a way to join unions because the discussions are going. I talked about the state of Michigan. It was right after they became a right-to-work state, they increased union membership over 50,000. And that was a year ago. So, we have that situation where basically there's a whole lot of people who are driving these right-to-work issues and the rights of union members, and it's a bunch of bull put on just to drive a nail into the union movement and having members who are working, not even members, but working people out there, have a right to representation.
That's a deceptive term, right to work, as we know, and so it's created by some clever people that obviously their goal is to deceive, because if you really thought about it, the right to work, who wouldn't support that, right? It sounds like the right to go to work, obviously, but really it's the right to work for less. One interesting point on last week's broadcast, we had the executive director of the National Union of Hospital and Healthcare Employees, Chris Woods, on the program, and I'll tell you, Joe, you remember how passionate Chris was in his speech when he talked about Pat. He was talking about the Janus decision, and he said they've been preparing for this for a year. They have, it has sparked their passion, and there's no way they're going to let that decision destroy their union. Not only that, it's going to make them better. I wanted to run through a wall after I heard him talking because he inspired me so much. So,
Pat, you get the same sentiment coming out of the meeting in Washington?
Absolutely.
They mobilized.
The tone of the leadership of our national organizations has changed completely, because now that they've worked at this, getting prepared for the Janus decision, knowing, with the right-wing court, and it's going to get worse, it's not going to get better with this person in D.C. who says he represents us. Mm-hmm. But the end of the day, what we're seeing is more people who, like Chris put down last week, are seeing this fever for the members themselves, because they're taking a look at what they have. And here's what I say to you, and here's the mistake they made. They kind of they woke up a silent bear.
Right.
Okay?
They underestimated us.
Because if you would go months ago, you would go to a closed shop company job where people are union because they work there, and ask them about their membership in the union, more than likely they'd talk about the dues they pay.
Right.
And this is what, the Alex and those people play on. But when you get talking to them and say, well, do you have health care? Oh, yeah, I got great health care. Well, who gets it? Well, it's in the collective bargaining union gets that. Well, you're going to be able to retire. Oh, I got a really good retirement plan, or I have a really good 401. And then start talking, and all of a sudden they realize, oh, wait a minute, I wouldn't have all this. The guy who lives down the street from me don't have this. I have it because I pay dues to the union, and I have people out there fighting for me every day. So, it's brought up not only with leaders, but it's brought up members to talk about why they're members.
And that's the thing. People are talking now. And in other words, this has sparked a whole, movement of solidarity, of mobilization, union leaders talking to union members, grassroots campaigns in preparation. So at the end of the day, their intentions were to divide us, and listening to our leadership, Pat Eiding and John Doherty and Rick Bloomendale and Rich Trumpka across the board, but our individual labor leaders, the union leaders, presidents and business managers as well. Their passion sustains us, and talking to their members, it's motivated, I think, our labor movement more than ever.
Do the members hear?
The members are hearing, Joe.
That's good.
They didn't hear before, but they're hearing now. And because there's been such a big thing about what this is all about, listen, when they threw that party because of the Mark Janus, that small group of AFSCME workers, most of them, if not 80, 90% of them, came to the party. And it seems a little ridiculous. Why are you coming to a party that the honoree can't be here because he's not a union person? And it's because they're getting the feeling of what happened and what these, and more and more we're learning that these people were put in place just to attack the rights of working people to have representation.
Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. We roll on here on a Saturday night as we go to a commercial break. Stay with us. Got a couple of programming reminders when we come back after the break, and more with the president of the AFL-CIO, Pat Eiding. Back in a moment.
I believe there's room, for the national building trades, the local building trades, that have partnerships with the Trump administration as it pertains to energy, as it pertains to infrastructure, as it pertains to the undocumented worker.
Back here live on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor as we come to you on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. One programming reminder as we look ahead to the fall, if you can believe it, in the month of September, our labor leader roundtables will resume at the Sonesta. And the last week of September, the show on the 29th, will be our labor leader roundtable. Teledoc will be part of that, JDoc, and that should be a great Saturday night as they begin and they resume starting in September.
Joe, I want to talk a little bit about organizing because what the other energy that's come out of this this whole effort by those other folks to tear down labor organizing and what have you. But before I go there, I want to talk about this president that sits in the White House. With last week, the vice president was in town, and besides screwing up traffic, he talked about all the great things the president's doing. And one of the things he didn't talk about is all the rights of the government workers that this one stroke of the pen, the President of the United States took away from government workers. Folks who work in HUD, folks who work in your veterans, folks who work in everything, the parks, everything. Things like not being able to put anything on the company bulletin board anymore. Things like having time to represent their members. He internally, with this stroke of the pen, is trying to destroy the union that's been around for a long, long time representing those government workers. And that's what you're seeing happening with this White House. So to my brothers and sisters out there that think he's cool and think he's neat with all the stuff he lies about, this economy, by the way, I don't care whether he wants to argue with me or not, was going in the right direction when Obama was there. And some of the stuff I agree with him. I happen to agree with some of the stuff he's doing with China and those people as far as tariffs and stuff, because it should have been done a long time ago, many times ago. But to take these rights away from the government workers is a cheap shot. It's a terrible way to do things, and it's another way that he's working with the right wing, trying to destroy things. And listen, I know this guy from when he messed with all the contracts and put people out of business in Atlantic City. For many working people lost their benefits because of him. So I know what he's like. But I had to throw that in, and there'll be more about that, I'm sure, as we go forward, because there's going to be. I know that government workers are going to stand up, whatever rights they have. So speaking of standing up, United Here, who represents thousands and thousands of workers and hotel workers and food services, casinos, those things, they're making an effort. The big elephant, if you will, in the hotel industry is Marriott. And you may or may not know that this big Marriott here in Philadelphia has worked without a collective bargaining agreement for all the years it's been here. It came when the first convention center came around. But what we see now is the workers are hearing these things about unions, and they're starting to get another feel, and they want to have rights. And if you think about the people, and anybody travels, think about the people who clean your room, do those things. They have, you folks may not know this, but some of those folks have a set amount of rooms they got to get done every day. They got this, it's almost like piecework. And now what they've done to them is they put them on an app, if you will, and in a moment's notice they say, well, you got to leave the second floor and go up to the 18th floor and do that room. And so their quota by the end of the day still has to be met, but now it's twice as hard. And these are folks who probably are working two jobs just to keep ends together because of the money. And they're folks of color, they're women, they're the easiest people for the businesses to beat up on. So here in Philadelphia, I got to tell you, United Here is doing a great effort. We've talked to a few weeks ago. We've talked to some of the workers in the Marriott here. I think other hotels are going to look. And folks should know that the conglomeration of hotels now, when you're talking to the Marriott, you may be talking to a Sheraton, you may be talking to a Wyndham. You don't know who's together with these things. So I just wanted to touch base that folks who work at these hotels are the hardest working, lowest paid people you can find. So if this effort keeps forward, and you see folks from the Marriott or any other hotel that's trying to get their self protected by a collective bargaining agreement, please step up and help them. Remember that. When you're in a restaurant, that's an easy place because people tip if they're happy, that whatever. But think about the hotel you stop in. That's somebody going to come in there and clean your mess after you leave. And it's probably a person, a lot of times a person of age has been doing this for years because she had no other choice, who has kids and maybe a single mom. It doesn't matter what the reason, they should be treated fairly. So I just want to put it out there that the Marriott, and we will support the Unite Here folks every way we can, and we'll support those workers to make sure they get the right to collective bargaining down the line. And I think you're going to see that happen. And in Philadelphia, I think, with all the prosperity that's going on, these hotels are doing great. They're a part of the conversation. Back last week when they talked about Made in America, the hotel people had something to say about it because what's coming here, that's all. And that's all important. That's good. But now how about treating the workers right?
I mean, you see what, you talk about the Janus decision. And then you look at individuals like this who are working in difficult conditions and they want a voice. They don't have one now, and many times they're being taken advantage of. Well, the Janus decision is taking individuals who have a collective bargaining agreement, who have a fair shot at a good wage, a fair wage, and fair benefits and fair working conditions. And the way I look at it, anyway, is it does the exact reverse. It takes these individuals, and you look at these Marriott workers who are dying to get a collective bargaining instead of get a voice. And these individuals right here, this individual is trying to take the voice away from his people so they can go backwards 50 years.
The irony of the story is I listened to Pat and I listened to you and absorb what we talk about on a weekly basis here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor is never more evident than our conversation that you just referenced. The Made in America conversation or the convention center, the hotels are standing in line with their both arms out on their knees,
Amen,
waiting for the deal to come together and benefit from it. And then the moment they turn around and go out the door, it's a different approach. It's anti-union. Drives me crazy, Pat.
Well, I mean, just Marriott alone probably drew in $22 billion last year. There's got to be something for the folks who keep that hotel up for them, and I won't mention the person's name, but about a week ago there was a conversation, and the one lady working at the Marriott Hotel, she said, we just hope the union can get us a voice, so we can have better timing and get the rooms done. We want to make sure they're done right for the people. But when they start putting you on a phone, the phone rings, and now you got to leave and go 4 floors to do the other room, people are going to come back to the room and say, oh, this person's not doing a job. I'm asking everybody who stays in a hotel, think about that for a minute. Think about what those workers are going through to get your room. And just look at the cart outside once in a while. I look at that cart, it almost looks like the show where the guy had all the trash hanging out of the truck. They got everything you can imagine hanging off their cart, and they're trying to push it down on a carpet that doesn't roll too good. They're all hard-working people.
The last 2 minutes of this segment, I want to do a quick transition into a soundbite from Senator Casey J. Doc, who was on our show a couple of weeks ago. And the first time we're back with Pat, and I want to get him to react so I can frame the conversation now, Pat, in a conversation built around the Supreme Court selection and Casey's opposition to it.
This process to select the Supreme Court justice is rigged for the hard right. It's as simple as that. We've never seen in American history, certainly not in recent American history, where the only people who get to apply for that job are 25 judges who were put on a list during the presidential campaign, and then added to that by the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation. Heritage Foundation is the most conservative organization in the country. It's anti-worker, anti-union. Heritage calls unions cartels, okay? That's like calling them drug pushers.
Senator Bob Casey with us a couple of weeks ago here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor. You can hear the angst in his voice.
Well, and listen, it shouldn't take the average Joe and Jane that much to realize what's going on. I mean, the Supreme Court was supposed to be an entity that balanced the governance process, if you will. That's the way the forefathers put it. Now it's being done politically.
Political.
So the Supreme Court is no different than electing a governor or electing a senator or electing a state house person. It's done politically, and then, who gets the chip. And it's always been that way, I understand, but there's been a balance. There was a balance when they could debate the issue a little bit more. There's no balance now. And Senator Casey's absolutely right. They are driving this. And by the way, there's going to be another appointment probably before too long. They're driving this so far right, it has nothing to do with working people. It's always about the big corporate people and the conservative right. And there's nothing wrong with the conservative. It's the right-wing conservative that is going after working people. They want to make two states, the very poor and the very rich. That's what their goal is.
Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor. It's the President's Hour with Pat Eiding. We'll take a break here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Back in a moment.
I'm the coming out step with them guys, okay? And I was a treasurer of the Democratic Party. I've been a loyal Democrat my whole life. But I've told people, and it hasn't, like I told you, it just didn't resonate with this election. If you look at the last few years, I've been telling people we have to become a little bit more individual. We have to be more of our own brand. We have to do a better job at becoming a business.
Back here live on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. The 31st Annual Tri-State Labor Day Parade and Family Celebration is in front of us. Monday, September 3rd, 2018. Oh, my God. Oh, Nelly. Another one. We've made it to another year. It's crazy.
And by the way, you don't know how fast that comes around.
It does come
you're
around.
On this end, let me tell you.
No, I know.
It seems like you start getting ready for it as soon as the last drum and bugle corps goes by, but it's a good thing. I mean, listen, I don't want to go off on that too early, but over 60 unions are involved, thousands of people involved. It's a great day, and it's a great reason to have a great day. And I think you're going to find this year, people are running for election because they're going to want to be around us. But if it's the right people, we want them around us, let me tell you. So, but guys, I got to tell you that, the thing that's happening all over the country, last week when Vice President Pence was here again, there was demonstrations and this and that. But the thing that resonates in everybody's mind, I think, are kids in cages. Now, that may sound extreme, and I'm sure the other folks who do radio shows on this station might not like me saying that, but that's what it comes down to. Having kids being separated from their parents and put in what appears to be a detention center, quite honestly, and sometimes detention centers may be better. And there's two of them. There's the two big ones. One's in Texas and the other one's in Pennsylvania, unfortunately, here right in Berks County. And maybe through influence we can change that. Who knows? But until that happens, labor is coming together. And they're going to come together big because in 2012, we put some workers' rights bills together, and the IBEW nationally, and, of course, Johnny Doc's Local 98, probably worked about at least 6 months putting together. And contrary to the papers, there were somewhere in the area of 40 to 50,000 people on the Parkway. And I got to tell you, that day the neighbors weren't upset because they're working people. They weren't there with a band. They were there for a cause. And so we start thinking about it not too long ago, and we want to see labor here in the city of Liberty, where it all started for labor and our country, to stand up for these kids in a very state that we have people being caged and separated from their parents. So I know there's been a lot of good efforts out there. There's a lot of people doing things. But this is going to be labor's effort. This is going to be labor to come together, and I would predict it's going to be by thousands. I don't know if it'll be 40, 50,000. We just started this thing 2 weeks ago. But I will tell you already last week, when our leaders in Washington were meeting, the general presidents down there are all looking to be part of this program that's going to happen here in Philadelphia. It's going to happen on the 15th of August at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's going to be at Penn's Landing. We already know where it's going to be. The thing we don't know yet, if it's going to be 5,000, 10,000, 25, or 30,000. But they're going to be there. And we invite folks who want to come and join us. But this is a labor event for those kids. And this is Labor United to Free the Children. This has to stop. We can't allow this to go on. And no better than labor, working people who get up every day and take care of their kids and work hard to put shirts on their backs or dresses on their backs, that we can't let this happen. So I want to put that word out to people who care, who are interested. I know that the labor movement, at least from the very Ohio end to the Atlantic Ocean, you're going to see people in Philadelphia on the 15th at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And our message is completely free the kids. Let these families be together. Process the process the way you have to process it. But don't do this. Don't, Mr. President, don't do this with these kids. What kind of person does that? Nobody wants to see. I mean, when you hear the news, last week there was I don't even know they found her yet, a college student lost. And the world comes together because they're separated from their family. And hopefully even with a good outcome, you don't want to see them separate. These kids are being forced. And I don't care if the right-wing likes or not, they're being forced into cages. And they're being housed like they did something wrong, like they're being imprisoned, for crying out loud. And mothers that are weeping and wondering if they'll ever see their kid again, not alone fathers and the whole families. But listen, forever and a day, our grandparents, my grandparents on my other side came from Ireland. They weren't born here. I'm not sure where my grandparents on my father's side, but I'm sure some of them came from Germany somewhere. And everybody had parents come from somebody here. The only ones that didn't is the American Indians. And so, we have to find a way to handle this. And it certainly isn't by imprisoning kids and taking them away from their families. So I want that out to, first of all labor people. Anybody that's out there working, but all labor people who have the benefit of collective bargaining, come and join us on the 15th. Come and join us at 4 o'clock. This is not going to be a feast, but we will have some music and we'll have some folks there, and there'll be limited speakers, and certainly our mayor and our governor and our senator are going to be welcome to speak. This is not going to be a political speech. This is about what they believe in. And I know where the mayor is. I know that he's got some things he's having a hard time dealing with, but I also know that he's with the kids, and he works every day hard and takes a lot of criticism because he works so hard towards children. He certainly would be there if we have this demonstration. So I'm not calling it a rally. I'm calling it Labor United to Free the Children, because there's been a lot of rallies. This is labor coming together. And I would say to you that I think the world is going to recognize the fact that aside from all these other things with Janice and all those other things, working people are always out for the good of the world, and are always good for working people.
And what I think is amazing about that is that this isn't typically labor's fight. This is labor standing up for people who often can't stand up for themselves. And certainly if you put yourself in that position, like Pat said, right today, Ancestry.com is a big deal, right? So me and my wife got our Ancestry done. It's really cool. Well, everybody's coming from, other countries.
Please don't share any of those results.
Bro, there was no surprises. That's all I can tell you. But the thing is, I'm just saying, we came from Italy, we came from Ireland, we came from across the oceans, and in some cases, some of these families been asked questions. Those who've had their kids taken from them, if you knew what was going to happen, would you have done it? And they've said, I would have no choice. Where I came from is, now you want, of course, legal immigration and all that stuff, but that's not the issue. We're talking about individuals who in many cases don't think they have a choice. So it's labor standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves. And anybody out there listening should take a note.
Pat, last word, 30 seconds.
Well, listen, I think we covered a lot of things that probably we could go into a lot deeper. Every one of those subjects, especially organizing, what Janice is doing.
You don't have time to do a president's report 8 hours a day, do you?
No. But nor the fact that do I have time to do this stuff myself. We only do these things when we're doing something good, bad, or indifferent. We do it together, and I think that's what I want to leave with our listeners out there who have the benefit of a collective bargaining agreement. Let's not forget that, by the grace of God, there go us. We could be begging for a job that we don't have to work 3 jobs to do.
Here.
We've got what we got because of collective bargaining.
On behalf of JDoc and on behalf of the president of the AFL-CIO, Pat Eiding, I'm Joe Kraus. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time.
and in no way represents the views of WPHT or its management.